Welcome to City Hall. We'll get started with our invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. I'll ask Councilman Larry McAtee to lead us in the invocation, if he would, and Councilman Sam Bowman to follow up with the Pledge of Allegiance. Would everyone please stand?
Father, we thank you for this opportunity to come together as your servants. We thank you for the blessings that you bestowed on Oklahoma City over the years, for the responsibility that you've given us to keep things moving in a direction that would be pleasing to you, that would meet the needs of the people. We thank you for our mayor, for his commitment to Oklahoma City, and for the leadership that he provides. Now, as we go into this meeting today, may we have the wisdom to make decisions that would be pleasing to you, that would be benefit to the people of Oklahoma City, that would carry forward the freedoms that we have. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Please salute the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, among the many ways that Oklahoma City has ascended in the past few years is in the arts. And drawing attention to that this morning, we have a proclamation. We have named the month of February as Allied Arts Month in the city of Oklahoma City. I'll ask Deborah Center and Ann Johnstone to come forward. Would you please come forward? We have a proclamation. I'll ask the clerk to read it as we get settled.
Whereas the month of February has been recognized as Allied Arts Month by the Mayor and Council of the City of Oklahoma City and hundreds of nonprofit organizations, local businesses, and the community for 4 decades. Whereas the arts enhance and enrich the lives of every Oklahoma City resident. And whereas the arts play a unique role in the lives of our families, our communities, our city, and our country. Whereas the nonprofit arts industry also strengthens our economy by generating nearly $500 million to local governments and by supporting the full-time equivalent of more than 4,000 jobs in Oklahoma County alone. Whereas since 1971, Allied Arts has raised more than $42 million as the champion of Central Oklahoma's art community. Now therefore, Mick Cornett, the mayor of the city of Oklahoma City, does hereby proclaim February 2011 as Allied Arts Month in Oklahoma City and urges citizens to participate in the arts and to promote and celebrate the arts and culture in our community.
Let's show our appreciation to not only these two, but the entire arts community. Deborah?
Yes. Mayor Cornett, City Council members, we want to thank you for this public recognition of the value of the arts. Oklahoma City is so fortunate to have leadership who understands the importance of the arts as we continue to grow in our city's renaissance. On behalf of Allied Arts Board, thank you for this proclamation. We appreciate you.
I, too, would like to express my thanks on behalf of the many arts agencies, some represented around the horseshoe here, and also in the audience we have board members, staff members, and leadership from our campaign this year. Our goal is to have the highest year ever, raising over $3 million this year, and so that we can continue to enhance the quality of life, inspire school children, and bring beauty and joy to Oklahoma City through dance, visual art, music, song, and theater. So thank you for recognizing the inherent value of the arts to our great city. And I would also like to mention that this year marks Allied Arts' 40th year of existence. And just as a small token of our appreciation, we wanted all the council members to have a snack for later, so we brought you this. But know, too, that we look forward to strengthening our partnership even more over the next 40 years. Thank you, Mayor Cornett.
I think all our guests should bring snacks, so I think it's a wonderful addition. Thank you all both, and I know there are a lot of people here today supporting the arts, and you do it 365 days a year, but today let us thank you very, very much for all you do. Let's show our appreciation one more time.
Mayor, if I could, as the board chairman of one of the agencies that receives Allied Arts money, I want to tell you how much we appreciate that and what you do in the city. And if you looked at all the agencies and all of the individuals that receive help from Allied Arts throughout the year, you'd understand how important they are to the overall fabric of art. And I don't want to leave without recognizing one of the campaign co-chairs this year, Brenda McDaniel, is in the audience, and I'm always amazed that they pick somebody that you can never say no to. So I have no doubt that you'll reach your goal this year, but congratulations.
And Mayor, if I could, I don't want to select, we've got people here from so many of the different agencies that I don't want to single anybody out, but I see John Krasnow in the back, and I had the privilege of attending the ballet Saturday night, and it was an absolutely magnificent performance. All four pieces were just wonderful, and the audience was cheering and whistling and clapping, and it was really a lot of fun. So thank you all for everything you do to enrich life, and I've eaten a whole pack of these already, and they're awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, Pat?
No, I just want to comment. Oklahoma City is really becoming a world-class city. Saturday night they had the ballet, which I went to. It was really, really great. But the other end of downtown, they had a bull riding contest. And so there was a variety of opportunities for anybody downtown.
Oh, that's an art for sure.
And I've been the chairman of two of the agencies that Allied Arts supports, and their support is truly, really, really valuable. And I had the opportunity several years ago to co-chair their campaign. And unfortunately, we didn't make our goal that year, but I'm Brenda, don't worry. Those were tough times. Anyway, it's a great, great organization, and it is one of the leading arts agencies of its type in the whole country. It sets the pace, has ever since its inception years ago. Congratulations to the Allied Arts.
All right. Yes, Sam?
I just wanted to say how well done I thought the article in the Sentinel was, I believe it was last week. It just got me thinking that that could lead to perhaps articles throughout the year on the different arts agencies. It was well done, very comprehensive, and I think a good lead-in article for some to follow.
Jim?
It probably should be noted that co-chairman McDaniel's chauffeur this morning is the Chancellor MAPS 3 Chairman, Tom McDaniels, and so he is a multitasking young man.
We appreciate everyone coming today, and thank you all very much. I remember about a year ago, Gary had a growth removed from his head by a dermatologist or some sort of work, and I remember thinking at the time, I wonder if I'm ever going to have that done. And sure enough, yesterday I went in and had a growth removed from my forehead through a 30-year period of golf that I played from the age of 10 to 40. And so I may have a series of these over the next periods of my life. And so the staff has provided me with this. If it's too unsightly for the cameras, I can just hold this up and be as good as new. But hopefully in a few days the scarring will go away. But I looked like a boxer when I got out of that chair. The big stitches going across my forehead, and scene from Rocky. All right. Well, we're on line 3 of the council agenda this morning. I'll take a motion on these appointments. We have a motion and a second on item 3A and B. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. We're now on to item 4. These are the Journal of Council Proceedings. To receive the Journal of Council Proceedings for February 8th and approve the Journal of Council Proceedings for both January 18th and the 25th. Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. And now we're on to item 5, which is request for uncontested continuances.
None this morning, Mr. Mayor.
Anybody else have a request for an uncontested continuance? Then we'll move on and recess the council meeting, convene as the Oklahoma City Municipal Facilities Authority, where there are 4 items. We have a motion and a second on the MFA.
Your Honor, I ask a question,
Yeah, sure.
please. On items C and D, I'd like to know how they're related. They seem similar. I'm not sure. I'm curious if we paid, are both these being paid, or is the first one subsumed in the second one?
Actually, if you'd like, we can defer this. We are intending to go into executive session on the council items, but obviously these are related. So we could defer those and rescind, and we'll go into executive session later and come back and discuss.
Yeah, well, those items are on the council agenda if you'll look at item 8A and B. We are going into executive session.
We'll go into executive session. Okay, and that's fine. I'll withdraw my question until after the executive session.
We need to approve these executive sessions also.
So we should go into executive session
For both.
for these
Okay.
items also.
All right. Cast your votes on moving item A and B from the MFA and C.
No, it's B
Yeah,
and C.
it's C and D, isn't it? C and D. Move items C and D to executive session. Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Now, we already have a motion on the
Mayor,
MFA on item 1 and 2.
Mayor, I have just a comment on item A.
Okay.
It is it's the first leg of widening and resurfacing Choctaw Road. And when we did the bond issue, the first mile of Choctaw Road south of the city limits between Oklahoma City and Midwest City was not in the project. And as we go forward, I would certainly like to see if there's any possibility to, if these come in under bid, to that some of that money could be accumulated to do that other mile, because it's interesting that we would start a mile south of our city limits rather than just take it all the way to the city limits. So it's just a thought, and there may not be money there as we go forward, but it'd be nice to, if there is money there, to accumulate it.
Are we
and try
taking
to
this
do
2-lane to 4-lane? Is that what we're doing?
Yes, and it's part of it is in conjunction with the ODOT's project to really redo that intersection at I-40 and Choctaw Road, which is, before the tornado, was a much more dangerous intersection than it is now. The tornado tore down all the businesses, so most of the people don't get off there anymore. But that's it's part of an overall combined project.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. We're now voting on the MFA on item A and B. Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. So we'll adjourn.
Recess.
You're right. We're recessing MFA, and we'll rejoin that in executive session. Okay? And we'll convene now as the Oklahoma City Public Property Authority, where we have 1 item. Motion and a second on the PPA. Any comments or questions on this item? All right, cast your votes. Passed unanimously. We'll adjourn OCPPA, reconvene the council meeting with a consent docket. All right, are there any individual considerations?
Your Honor, I've got a couple of minor questions on several of the items. B, F, I, then I have a comment on N, I believe it is. Yes, N.
N?
Yes.
All right.
And Mayor, I had 6G, just a question really, and 6S, comment.
Mayor, I'd like item P to be voted on separately, if we could.
Okay. All right.
And then, Mayor, Russell's here to do a presentation on item D.
Item D. Okay. Well, why don't we start with that?
This is a de-annexation request. We have been working jointly with the City of Yukon on this proposed de-annexation of a portion of roadway in Oklahoma City, which is occurring concurrently with an annexation by the City of Yukon This is a policy that we've applied over many years for joint shared roadways where, in the interest of better maintenance for one jurisdiction or the other, the roadway is a boundary, or the boundary of the city is taken to one side of the road or the other. In this particular case, we are de-annexing so that the portion of the road is going to end up in the city of Yukon. This process began almost a year ago. The city of Yukon came to the Planning Commission asking to rename a portion of Mustang Road to Yukon Parkway. In discussion with the city, it was realized that here was an opportunity to be able to resolve these shared roadway situations. We also added then a portion of Northwest 10th Street, 2.5 miles of 10th Street. So we have a total of 3.5 miles of roadway, 1 mile of Mustang, and 2.5 miles of Northwest 10th. And you can see that illustrated in the sort of blue turquoise color on the map there, and you can show where the boundary is between Yukon and Oklahoma City. This is it in closer detail. In negotiating this, we do have a water line, which is item C on the agenda today. The Water Utilities Trust has reached an agreement with the City of Yukon to maintain that facility, so it will be within the City of Yukon, but we have an agreement so that if we need to access that water line, that is in place. We also have an agreement between the City of Yukon and the Public Works Department regarding maintenance of various traffic facilities in both sections of the roadway. So the Water Utilities Trust approved this on January the 18th. This began, as I said, last year. It was presented to the Annexation and De-Annexation Committee in May of last year. They saw the merit in this and recommended that we move forward with negotiations on this process. It has taken a long time to work out these agreements about who's going to be responsible for what, but it was approved. It was taken to the Planning Commission, approved in January of this year. It's up for introduction today. Will be heard for adoption on March the 8th, and then will become effective on April the 16th and 17th. And as I said, the City of Yukon is operating a concurrent process, so it's expected that our approval will coincide precisely with their approval. So they'll get a piece of property and we'll lose a piece of property. The joint costs that have been invested in the roadway work out to roughly even. Most of the roadway has been constructed with ODOT funds. Expenses on the side of both of the cities is about equal, so there's no loss of investment. Happy to answer any other questions on that.
Your Honor, just a couple of procedural questions. Were the property owners in there, were they consulted or involved in this transaction?
They've been notified. They were notified originally. There was one woman who was concerned about the City of Oklahoma City giving away public property, but when it was explained, what the investments have been over time, I think her concerns have been alleviated. There were also property owners on Mustang Road who were concerned and had objected during the Planning Commission hearing regarding the impact on them, because they have a number of clients and they're addressed at Mustang Road. And I haven't heard anything on that recently, so I don't know what their current concerns are, but there were protests.
From your map, Russell, it appeared that some of that property had been zoned various ways. Does that zoning carry forward, or does it start all over, like C3 up there? Was that Oklahoma City zoning originally?
Well, since it's the roadway, I don't think the adjoining zoning really has any relevance.
Okay, so we're just giving away is just the roadway?
Just the roadway.
Okay.
I have one. There are some of this we've talked about before, but there are a number of places in my area, and I know there are in others, where the city limits of Midwest City or Del City or more butt against us, and it's irregular. This case originated from Yukon coming to us.
Correct.
I wonder if it wouldn't be well for us to look at those places where these problems exist and us take a more proactive stance in doing this, because I can take you to 2 or 3 places where it's really problematic. And as someone, when you try to explain it to a neighborhood group and say, well, I'd like to fix that, but it's in Del City and they don't have the money now, or vice versa. I mean, it's just not we ought to try to look at ways to alleviate that, I think.
We have addressed, I think, most of these over the years. I'm not saying there aren't a few. I think there's one down by Del City in your area that's probably the one you're referring to.
Right.
But I know that we've worked out a number of these over the years, and most of them have been looked at, but we can go back
Right.
and check again as to the ones that haven't been specific. And there was an issue on the one in Del City, and I don't remember what that was, but there was an issue on it.
Well, it had to do with Del City did not want to look at doing this. They had come to us asking for a little piece of Crystal Lake that is in Oklahoma City, and I thought, well, this is a
Thompson Lake.
Thompson Lake,
Eagle
excuse
Lake.
me.
Eagle Lake.
Yeah,
Same.
Eagle
Same
Lake. It used to be Thompson Lake. Anyway, a lake right over that way, over. They had come to us and asked us about it, and when we tied it to let's straighten out some of these boundary line problems, then it kind of went away. It didn't become near as important to them. But I think if we took the initiative and looked for, I can tell you Bryant is that way, Southeast 44th is that way, Southeast 29th is that way, and Santa Fe is that way. All those are the touch that I have contact with, and all of them are irregular. And I think if we would take the initiative, it's just to the betterment of the whole metropolitan area to get it straightened out.
We'd be happy to relook at that and see how many are left.
I have got a situation that while you're looking into those things, I got a report one time that Britton Road in the vicinity of May Avenue, the city of the village said that their city limits started at the north end of the section line road, and the city of Oklahoma City said their city limits started at the south end, which essentially left the Britton Road sort of a no man's land in there. I thought about putting a toll booth in there and collecting a toll, but I thought I couldn't do that. Anyway, if you could look into that and see if we could resolve that issue, because that intersection at May and Britton Road is suffering. It needs some work. And a year or so ago, we got a conclusion that, well, it didn't belong to anybody. It was the county's responsibility to fix it. And if so, we need to delineate those responsibilities and sort of, if we come to some kind of reconciliation on it, I would appreciate it.
All right.
Manager, if you're making that master list, there's a short section, I believe it's Wilshire, in front of the Nichols Hill School. Dennis has looked at that over the years, and it's a split right there in front of the school.
West Nichols Hills, right? No Nichols Hills?
On Wilshire.
Wilshire would be Nichols Hills. Okay.
Any other questions for Russell? Any other questions for Russell? All right, Pat, you want to make comments on BFINN?
Thank you. Just on B, it's a question. What does WSCA stand for? We're spending $360,000 on it, and I'm just curious as what we were buying.
Actually, we're not spending it. It's authorization to purchase off the contracts.
Okay. But maybe can you tell me what in case we do spend that much money, what WSCA stands for?
It's a Western States Cooperative Agreement. It's a purchasing agreement between Western States that alliance. I'm sorry. It's an alliance between Western States that does cooperative purchasing.
Okay.
So they all bid, and then, or they bid it, and then everybody is allowed to buy off the contracts.
Thank you. On F, this is a library project, Northwest Library in Oklahoma City, and it's a change order. And the line that got my attention, construction is expected to be complete by fall 2011. And there's been, I think, some anticipation that the completion date would be the spring of 2011. And I wondered if this was a change. We are pushing it back, and if it is, we need to have some kind of explanation. We can take the neighbors out there because they're looking forward to the library being open in the spring.
Councilman, I'll check with staff and get back with you on that. I'm not exactly sure as to when the opening is going to be, but I'll check with them.
Okay,
and I'll
thank you very much, because at one time we were told, I think, that it was going to be this spring. On I, this is a street widening project. We're putting two projects together. And I was wondering if it's going to have any impact on the timing of the May Avenue 164th to 178th stretch. We had a public meeting on last week.
No, sir. As a matter of fact, I checked with staff right before I came over here this morning, and we have issued the work order to the contractor, and we expect him to start work as early as next week.
Okay, good. So the timing will not be impacted at all by that change?
Right.
Okay, thank you. And on N, just a sort of a compliment, we have a major sanitary sewer project going on in the Quail Creek area. We have to cross the Quail Creek Golf Course with this project. And I want to compliment the golf course people and their board and management out there for being so cooperative with our engineers in that project. We've, I think, reached a very satisfactory timing adjustment to reflect the interest of the golf course without unduly impacting the construction progress we hope to make out there. So just a compliment on the job that was well done out there, and Councilman Mars was very instrumental in those negotiations. I want to compliment him as well, because it was a very sensitive issue, and it was handled very well, I think, by a lot of people.
Okay. Meg, you wanted to speak on 6G and 6S?
Yes, and really just a question with regard to 6G. This appears to be an extension of a contract and $1 million funding for street repairs. Will this help us recover from the last couple of weeks of terrible snow damage?
These are normal pothole patching contracts that we have. This is just the extension of those.
Okay.
Okay.
We may need some more money based on driving around for the last couple of days.
Yes, we may.
6S, I just wanted to make note of that we're accepting the donation of $5,000 from both Midtown Renaissance Corporation and the St. Anthony Hospital to relocate a piece of public art from down here at City Hall, and it will be placed in the second roundabout at 10th and Chartel. So, great project, and thank you to those folks for helping to provide the funding to relocate that.
Pete? You want to... Okay, you want to vote on item P separately. Skip, do you want to say something?
I just had a question on J, and this is the... Apologize. It's J, the street grates, tree grates. Is this, as I understand it, the amount that's been estimated, or there's a rebid statement in the language of the document. Can you tell me if this is what has been agreed upon in reference to the cost?
Yes, sir. It's my understanding that when we met with the foundry, there was a cost that was associated with realigning the grates on those, and staff has negotiated, and I do believe that this is the cost associated with that realignment of the, of the forms in order to construct these grates.
Okay.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor, and we want to make that with exception of item P. Can someone remake the motion except for item P? Okay, all right. We're going to vote on the consent.
Okay.
Okay. Cast your votes. Passes with the exception of item P. Can we have a motion on item P? Okay, voting on item P. Cast your votes, and it passes unanimously. We're on to the concurrence docket. Any comments or questions on item 7? All right, are there any individual considerations? Sounds like we're ready to go. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Moves us on to item 8. These are items that require a separate vote. Item 8A is an issue I understand we do not need executive session.
That's correct.
All right, how about a motion then? Cast your votes on item 8A. Passed unanimously. Item 8B, I understand we do need to move into executive session.
Yes, sir.
All right. Cast your votes, and that item is moved into executive session. And item C, we also do need to go to executive session.
That's correct.
Cast your votes, and that item is moved to executive session. Item 8D is increasing the parameters of the fund balance, an item that was discussed at the budget workshop a couple of weeks back.
Yeah.
Laura, you want to come in and explain through and remind us the policy that we're enacting today?
Sure. As a reminder, we did review these at the workshop, but I think it's been a few weeks, so it might be good to go over it again. We did adopt the Municipal Budget Act as our budgeting method in 1979, beginning with fiscal year 1981. So in our original policy, we did refer quite a few times to the Municipal Budget Act, but now we've incorporated the language from the Municipal Budget Act into the policy, so it's very explicit right there. Our current budgeting and financial policies were adopted by the City Council in 1997, and we have a separate policy on fund transfers right now, which was adopted by the Council in 1999. So we're proposing to combine those two policies into one and make one consistent financial planning and budgeting policy. Our current policy has provisions for balanced budget. There are no changes. That, of course, is in the Municipal Budget Act. No borrowing for operations. Departments are involved in preparing budgets. We include performance information in the budget, and of course that's been expanded through our use of LFR. We address that generically in the policy. And our financial forecast is required. And all of those things are no change from the current policy, so they are proposed to you exactly the same way. Our transfers are approved administratively, also no change. Regular reports to the City Council on transfers are still required. That will be no change. And we have two kinds of operating reserves. One is called contingency. That's included in the budget. Our target for that is 2%, although we're a little bit under that this fiscal year, so due to the financial constraints that we were facing during our budget. And then the other is called fund balance. That's our other operating reserve. To stay current with the Municipal Budget Act, we've changed the language in the policy that refers to the unbudgeted fund balance. Now we call that an operating reserve. So that's a change that you'll note. I've left it as unbudgeted fund balance so that we can talk about what we commonly know that as, but in the policy, we'll begin to refer to that as operating reserve. Currently, our unbudgeted fund balance, I'll remind you, is the target is a range from 6 to 10%. We brought the proposal forward of 8 to 16% and heard that we were clearly directed to change that to 15%, which we still get very close to a 2 months reserve there with that 15%. Also, an unbudgeted fund balance of 1 to 3% for other funds. And right now, we would propose to move that to unbudgeted fund balance or operating reserve of 5 to 10% for most other funds. There will be some exceptions. We would not want to interfere with the trusts and their ability to state their fund balances within the trust fund, so we wouldn't necessarily require that in their operating fund. And we want to preserve that opportunity for them so that they can represent their financials consistently to the rating agencies. However, they do have policies that exist for their operating reserves. Currently in AQUA and OSEAT, for example, the trust policy is to keep a 90-day operating reserve in their fund. So that would be consistent with the recommendation.
Laura?
Yes.
I have a question about the proposed unbudgeted fund balance. We're raising it from 6 to 10 to 8 to 15.
That would be the proposal.
How long prior to this last decline had it been since the fund balance dipped below 8?
I cannot respond to that. I do not know the answer to that.
I think we dropped there, scraping around, I think about 02 when we had that after 9/11 we had some issues, and I know we dropped down at that point in time. That would be, without doing research, Mr. White, I believe when we did.
Okay.
Go ahead, Doug. Again, 8 to 15% is equal to about 1 to 2 months of expenses. We were proposed to make the change to 8 to 15 because it does help us come into compliance with some best practices and financial policies, including the GFOA recommendation that you have no less than 2 months' worth of expenses in your unreserved fund balance. And of course, there are many reasons that you would want to have that. Certainly, the last recession that we are still finishing up would draw our attention to the fact that we need to have reserves to keep us from having extreme budget changes during those types of recessions. And also, in the event that we had an unexpected revenue disruption, this would provide a cushion for us also.
My question wasn't whether that was too high or low. I was just trying to get some historical background on how long it had been since it had even come down to that lower figure, which is good. I'm glad to hear that it hadn't been down there. That's
Certainly what we've seen is when you have that cushion, you learn that it's comfortable to have it. It helps protect you. And so if we did, and I'm sure the city manager's recollection of that is correct, I'm sure that we tried to make sure that we preserve that cushion going forward. Most of the other funds already have an unreserved fund balance of about 5%. Our unreserved fund balance of 5 to 10% for those other funds provides them with adequate cash flow and also protects them against an interrupted revenue source. Originally we had thought that a 3% fund balance would be fine because they could always fall back to the general fund if they needed to. We wouldn't allow the utilities department, for example, to not have enough fund balance or not have enough operating money. But when you allow that, then in the event of a system-wide disruption in revenues, you put all of the city at the same risk. So we wanted to equalize that fund balance to help reduce the reliance on the general fund. So 8% would be the equivalent of about 1 month's worth of expenses, $26.7 million. 15% is about 7.8 weeks worth of expenses, pretty close to 2 months at $50 million. Currently, our unbudgeted reserve in fiscal year 11 is $43.1 million. If the general fund pays back the MAPS 3 use tax for the operations costs that we have budgeted in this current year, and there are no other significant changes going forward, we're forecasting that the fund balance will begin the fiscal year 12 at about $47 million, which will be about 13% fund balance.
I'm trying to get some determination on what's typical of other cities, and the way municipalities react, you really can't go outside of state borders to determine, it's apples to oranges when you start comparing one city to another. But what about Tulsa? What is Tulsa's policy? Does anyone know?
I don't know.
Okay.
That's a great question because the rating agencies always want us to have a little larger operating reserves.
Right.
Sometimes they always bring that up as we go forward. Now, that's not a good rationale at this point because we're a AAA, and so we're not going to get better than that. But that is still their guidelines, and we should take heed in that. They are very quick to point out that we are the only state that is solely dependent upon sales tax revenues and sales tax revenues, and they still take this position, even though that the property values took such a great hit recently. They still view sales tax revenue as a more volatile revenue source than property tax. And so because of that, they always are suggesting that we have more substantial fund balance or operating reserve because our primary source of revenue is sales tax.
Yeah. I think this policy reflects our conservative nature in general, and I'm all for it. Yes, Meg?
Just a quick question, Laura. When we talk about the general fund paying back the MAPS 3 use tax,
Yes.
is that the $8 million that we use
Yes.
this year to?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions on this? Yeah.
If the fund balance was used to repay the money that was spent just to keep things afloat from the MAPS 3 use tax, then that would free the MAPS use tax. The money then would be back in the MAPS use tax account and could be used for public safety
It was our intent.
fleet replacement and so forth?
Yeah,
Yes.
it was staff's intent, and council hasn't formalized at this point, to use the MAPS 3 use tax for public safety capital, just like we used the MAPS for Kids use tax primarily for that purpose. Although, that's still up to the discretion of council. That's a decision that hasn't been made yet. But that's a need, and that's a good source for that.
I mean, it would seem to me that we're past the middle point of February. It's time we have that on the agenda to make that decision pretty quickly, I would think.
To pay it
Because
back.
this fund balance sits out there, and without, and these increases over the budget.
I think we're in the process of preparing a budget amendment as we speak that will address
Okay,
that.
I would like to see it sooner rather than later, though. I think it needs to be here, because if that's what our intent is, there's no sense misleading people that we have this fund out there that we could be using a lot of things for when we know we've got, in effect, a debt that needs to be repaid with that money.
And again, that's a council decision, but we are preparing a budget amendment that should be forthcoming fairly quickly.
I'm lobbying for the votes to do it at this point.
Larry?
You're not
Mr.
talking
Now
about-
Skip. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, I applaud what you've done, Laura, and I think the prudent thing to do is to go with the fund balance. But here, I would like to see the 16%, because I would like to err on the high of more conservatism, but the 15% is certainly the right direction. And I think our citizens will be well served if we adhere to those prudent type of financial arrangements in the future. Thank you for your work.
Skip?
Did I understand that the use tax is reference to public safety was for capital projects?
That's generally what we do. It's still council discretion at any time. Ready to go? Laura, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we got a second. And we're voting on item 8D. Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Item 8E is claims recommended for denial. Is there anyone here wishing to speak on any item listed under 8E? All right, we have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passed unanimously.
Your Honor, I'd like a comment on AE, and I think there was another one, 9A. It was had to do with some underground damage by our utility people. And it said that they asked for the locate on September 28th, did the work on October 1st. One of the utilities was able to respond and one wasn't. And it seems like that's a sort of a short time fuse as far as the length of time between the requests for location and the actual construction start. Is that typical?
It really depends on whether it's a class, it's a 1, 2, or 3 main break. If there's, loss of property, excessive loss of water or something, we will go in immediately and not wait for that. So it's a judgment call, and sometimes they worsen. Sometimes you've got a medium-level emergency, and the water keeps flowing and it erodes, and it turns into a Category 1 type of water main break. So it depends on the type of break and how much damage and how much water loss there is, and if there's people out of water or they've got low pressure. There's a lot of factors that enter into it.
Well, they're not big dollars, but I think that this disruption in service to our citizens by virtue of these facilities being damaged is something to be careful about.
Yes, sir.
All right. Voting on item 9, these are claims recommended for approval. Cast your votes. Item 9 passes unanimously. Item 10 is items from council. Pat, you want to get us started this morning?
Nothing, Your Honor, this morning. Thank you.
Okay. Skip?
Yes, I would like to, well, first of all, I would just like to say I think it was great for the governor of the state of Oklahoma to participate with the 5320 program that had a big kickoff at Stan Hupfield Academy yesterday. And as it relates to the health of our city, health of our state, I thought it was great for her to be there to help educate the children of that school and, of course, hopefully the parents as they can grow and be more healthy in their lifestyle as far as their eating, their fitness. And the governor could have been a lot of places, but she chose to take some time to spend with the little people in our community. And I think that this is where it's going to begin as it relates to changing this overall health consciousness that we have in our state. And it's kind of interesting. The mayor has been on a program for several years, and it had a great success. The leadership in our cities and our leaderships in our states, and of course we also have seen the leadership of the First Lady Michelle Obama as it relates to healthy eating and starting at the school age level. And I just thought it was great to see this as far as the leadership of the state of Oklahoma. And so I commend our governor for her participating in the program. And hopefully if other leaders step out and stand out front and start making initiatives like this, that we can see a change as it relates to our children's welfare.
Scott, I'm glad you brought that up, Skip. It was one message I think that needs to get out there is that we do fail on all national scales of being a healthy community and a healthy state. But it's not necessarily a situation where we can just throw more government money at it and think it's going to get better. I mean, these are decisions that people are making in large regard, whether it's obesity or smoking or other health-related issues. And so I think the messaging and the governor's support can certainly be helpful, and thanks for bringing that up, because your voice counts too. Yeah, Meg?
Really, just a couple of neighborhood notes. I had the privilege of attending the Class in 10 Penn meeting last week, and they met in our Weed and Seed office that's over in the Plaza District. And we had a really good turnout. This is a small neighborhood, low socioeconomic status, and these folks really, really care about what's going on in their neighborhoods. And everybody came out in the snow to be there, and I was really grateful. Urban Neighbors is an amazing group of young people downtown, and they are so excited about the direction our city's taking and what's going on, and very engaged. So that was also a wonderful meeting. The Gatewood neighborhood's in the middle of planning for their next year, and also a core group of people that came out on that snowy night to make sure that things were looked after. And tonight is a potluck dinner in Mesta Park, which should be great fun.
Great. Brian?
A couple things. I met with Taylor Park neighborhood last night. There was some concern about the drainage channel south of Jefferson. And there was a discussion on who actually owned that and who was responsible for taking care of it. So if we could get an answer on that and also address the, the maintenance issue with that channel, if it's our responsibility. And then also, with all the moisture that we've had as of late, and going back to the last year, the floods, Stryker Terrace is also, the drainage on the street. It's very clogged up. And if we could have somebody look at that and maybe get somebody out there to look at those drains and clean those out, I'd appreciate it.
We'd be happy to do that.
Just one comment. On the way yesterday to the legislative breakfast at the Historical Center, I, for the first time in a long time, drove Northeast 23rd Street from I-35 to the Historical Center. And I know Skip feels like that Northeast 23rd has a long way to go, but I'm telling you, it has come a long ways. It is so much cleaner, nicer. I was impressed at the progress that's been made between I-35 and the History Center. It is it's just short of remarkable. It is really really improved. It looks very nice. It's well on the way to coming back to being what it might have been 50 years ago.
Mm-hmm. We've had great leadership in Ward 7 through Willa and Skip in raising the standards of what's expected in Ward 7. I think that's reflective. Larry?
Yeah, just an observation. I'd like to thank Meg and Skip and Pat for last Wednesday afternoon braving the snow to come downtown for an Economic Development Committee meeting. It was a very good meeting. And for those participants that also came, and I was impressed getting down here how passable the roads were. This was in the afternoon, not in the morning. The next morning, Thursday morning, at about 4:30 in the morning, my wife and I had the opportunity to go to the airport to fly out. And I'd like to commend the airport people, Jim, for the way that the roads to the airport, around the airport, have been cleared, and also the parking lots. It was like it had not snowed at all. And I know that's not probably the testimony of everybody in Oklahoma City, but that brief microcosm of testing the roads, in my case, proved to be that the the emergency snow routes and the snow clearing was working in adverse conditions. So thank you.
Thank you.
Sam?
Just quickly, Mayor, Meg and I sit on a site selection committee, group of about 7 of us, for the selection of the new downtown elementary school. And we aren't there yet, but Meg, we meet tomorrow, and I think we'll have a pretty clear indication and some real exciting, I think a little bit out of the box ideas of where we are likely to go with this site selection for a downtown school. I think we're all going to find exciting. So I think within a couple of weeks, Meg, we'll probably be able to report a 1-2 out anyhow.
That's great. Thank you. Yeah. Gary, nothing there? All right, city manager reports. I know we have a couple of presentations to look forward to.
We do have a couple of presentations this morning. Eric Winger is up first, and Eric's going to give us an update on MAPS 3.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I appreciate the opportunity. We are obviously quickly proceeding ahead on continuing the planning stages for MAPS 3, and we're continuing to meet monthly, and in a lot of cases more than once a month, with several of the subcommittees and developing a lot of the ideas and concepts and furthering the MAPS 3 program. As we look at this month, February 2011, we are still continuing to add additional staff to the MAPS office. Obviously, we're continuing to manage MAPS for Kids. We're also assisting the district with the bond issue implementation. But we've now identified and clearly assigned staff specific to MAPS 3, and so we've got an effort that's on that as well. The program consultant, as we talk about ADG and the work that they've been doing for us over the past several months, they're currently developing the implementation plan. This plan, of course, is going to have a lot of the project detail, the conceptual budgets, and then, of course, it will also make the recommendations for the project priorities. They are looking to make a presentation to the City Council in the next couple of weeks. We're going to look at some of the priority criteria, the methodology that they're going to propose to go through that analysis to help break down those 8 major projects into some sub-projects, and then bring those to you with some logical order. An additional presentation to Council is then anticipated in March. What we're trying to lead up to is the approval of the implementation plan in the April-May timeframe, but we want to make sure that you're very informed about the process so that when we get to that April-May date, there's no surprises. We want to make sure that all the comments have been incorporated from the Council. We're seeking those actively with the subcommittees and others. When we look at each of the individual projects, we've actually continued quite a bit of work on all of them. On the park, there's been significant progress in the acquisition of the Upper Park properties. We now have 5 contracts completed over the past 6 weeks. There's approximately 29 parcels total, and we're still on track to hopefully have the Upper Park acquired by the end of the summer. The demolition of the Federal Post Office is very active. If you've looked to the south, you'll notice that there's some sizable holes in that old building. The asbestos abatement and some of the salvage efforts are still underway. But we expect that the building will be on the ground in about 4 weeks, and so that will clear the landscape for viewing the Union train station, which has kind of been covered up by that view to the south. The subcommittee continues to meet monthly. We're getting a lot of active participation in that, and we're anticipating that they'll meet again next week. Transit Modern Streetcar has had several active meetings, and there's 2 studies that are currently underway. Of course, the Multimodal Transit Hub study is underway. Their next meeting is planned in March. We're looking for that as a key recommendation to make sure that we get that linked up with some of the transit routes. The alternative analysis is also underway, and they're going to meet again this week. Something that has occurred out of the subcommittee meetings for MAPS 3 is that they have proposed some tentative alignments in the downtown area, and fortunately they are coinciding very well with some of the alternative analysis recommendations, so we are seeing some continuity there. But the advisory board subcommittee, they're still continuing to discuss these. We have another significant subcommittee meeting next week, and they're continuing to talk about routes, making sure that there's connections to the park, making sure that there's connections to the new convention center once it's sited, and then of course keeping the hub in mind as well. When we talk about the convention center, this is a pretty big week for us. We actually have Populous in town. They were the consultant that we hired to site the new convention center. They're going to be here over a number of weeks making multiple presentations. We're actually going to introduce them to the subcommittee next week, and then we would anticipate some future presentations to council as well. So that process is just beginning and underway. It'll take about 90 days to get that complete, so a little bit later this spring we should have a recommendation. Subcommittee is still actively meeting and going through this process, and of course we'll work together with council making that recommendation and proceeding on the project. The Oklahoma River, the race course windscreen, the race course lighting projects are underway. We're negotiating contracts with both of those consultants, and we're anticipating both will begin work in March. The windscreens is an engineering accomplishment that's going to probably take more time than we originally anticipated, but the lighting project, we fully believe that we can have that in place by the end of the summer. Our goal is to have that in place for the U.S. Masters Rowing National. Obviously, the night racing is a big opportunity of Oklahoma City, and we want to make sure that we make the best statement possible as a part of that event. Subcommittee continues to meet. We had a unique opportunity last month where the new Devon Boathouse was open. The subcommittee was able to meet there, and they were, of course, able to see a lot of the river activities firsthand. Gave them that unique, something that we just don't have with all the projects just yet, to have that on-site reference.
Rhett, can I have a couple of questions about the lighting? How many light standards are you anticipating there will be?
You know, there will be some engineering analysis. I think some of the early show that there's at least eight poles, 4 on each side, but there could be a few more or a few less. We're really going to rely on some of the computer modeling. Two things are important. One is to provide enough light on the water to make sure that it can be televised. The next is to make sure that the uniformity factor's correct so that you don't have glare. You want to make sure that you don't have a bright spot in one area and a dark spot in another. And so we use some computer modeling to get us started, and we should have a better understanding of that about midway through the project. So probably in about 60 days we'll know a little bit better. But
okay.
Most likely 8 poles.
If you're doing a football stadium, you can do it with 4, if you can do it in the corners. So you're saying basically twice what lighting is required for a large football stadium.
Well, and realize the length of the race course that we're looking at is 1,000 meters, and so it's 10 football fields long, or a little bit more, I mean, converting from yards. But in any event, the preliminary assessment is about 8.
Okay. All right, thank you.
On the state fairgrounds, the state fair staff completed some revisions to their master plan as they look at the opportunity to increase availability of an exposition type center, a large convention hall of sorts to take on some of those large trade events. They're able to better understand where they would like that sited and how that would be oriented to the current Nork Arena. We've passed that information to the subcommittee, and at this point they're really waiting for the approval of the MAPS 3 implementation plan to identify their priority. So we're not actually anticipating meeting several more times until that plan's approval, but once that plan is approved, we should have a very good idea of schedule and when that project can begin. The health and wellness centers, we have the scope of work development project underway. Consultant is in the negotiation phase of that contract, and we hope to have that work beginning in March. But obviously a key project for us is to help us better understand what wellness centers are here for Oklahoma City. Advisory board's been very active. The subcommittee's been very active, and they're starting to look at a lot of key features and a lot of the things that the council has expressed interest in operational issues, the age group that would be served by the wellness centers, and of course the locations as well. We talk about the trails, and the last two that I'll update are trails and sidewalks. The trails does have the trails master plan in place, and so we are going to be using that as a guide for the implementation of the trails projects. We're really just waiting on the implementation plan before we begin any of the development on that, but we're far enough along on the trails that we can expedite this work fairly quickly. The sidewalks, however, we're still finalizing, and we're awaiting some of the mapping work and some of the drawing work that the planning department is doing on identifying current sidewalks, those that are already funded by current projects, so that we can make best use of the MAPS 3 dollars, making sure that we don't overlay an existing project or double work, so to speak, in certain areas of the city. And so once that map is developed and we're able to utilize that, we're going to take that to the subcommittee, and we'll start planning that process for the MAPS 3 sidewalk projects.
On the trails, what is it we're waiting on? Is it further engineering studies? Are we waiting to prioritize the section of trails that we're going to begin?
So we've received some initial prioritization of the trail sections. There's about 4 major sections in the city that haven't been completed as a part of the Trails Master Plan. What we're really waiting for is the prioritization as a part of the MAPS 3 projects. Having that implementation plan published that suggests, and as we believe, some of the trails will be prioritized very early, but we want to make sure that we finish that plan before we proceed. We would like council's approval of the plan to give staff the direction to start advertising for architects and engineers to do trails work.
So we have not finished prioritizing the order of trail sections?
Not 100%, no, but we're underway.
When do you expect that?
I think it will come with the MAPS 3 implementation plan that we hope to have in the April-May timeframe. When we look at just the next steps in the program, obviously the implementation plan is the most important for us. We've collected a lot of information on the project, but this implementation plan is going to give us the road, or at least the schedule for us to complete the work. But I list here in the center section the projects that are already underway, the parkland acquisitions, the post office demolition, the site selection for the convention center, of course the health and wellness scope of work development, and then the 2 projects that are underway at the river. We hope to solidify a lot of this, and we're tentatively looking towards this spring to have a City Council MAPS 3 Advisory Board joint workshop, and we think that's going to provide a unique opportunity to be able to exchange notes and at least have a better understanding of the MAPS 3 program. That'll be part of the update process that I'm proposing as a part of the implementation plan as well, but that's what we're marching towards, and with that I can answer any questions that you might have.
The ancillary hub study, where is that on a time frame?
So they're going to meet again next month. I believe they've narrowed their site selection to 3 potential sites without a determination made, and with that, we're just awaiting the next meeting in March.
When do you think we're going to get a recommendation on the hub? Sam?
I think we're probably there, Mayor.
Okay.
But there's some public meetings that have to be held prior to the next hub study committee, just that it's further scrutinized, but I think we're pretty much there.
Okay, good. I think we're ahead of where I thought we'd be. If you asked me a year ago what I thought would be done by today, I think we're ahead of where I expected. Pat, and then Meg?
Yeah, just a question on the wellness centers. I know the focus seems to be on the physical aspect of wellness, but I think we need to be careful not to ignore the mental aspect of it. Keeping mental acuity seems to be an important part of aging successfully. I hope we have some efforts that would include some mental activities as well as physical activities.
That'd be great. Meg?
Yeah, just sort of a quick comment and an observation, Eric. It seems like through this discussion, some of the projects that we're working on obviously are brand new out of the ground, park and the transit, but a number of these have master plans that have been ongoing for a period of time. Fairgrounds would be one. I think the river would be one. Are we fairly carefully working within the framework of those master plans to be sure that the efforts that have already been accomplished are complemented by the additional work and not in any way hindered?
We are, and so for the fairgrounds, for example, I mean, we've more or less gone through the subcommittee process in adopting the master plan, and I think there's consensus in that group that the master plan goals can be achieved as a part of the MAPS 3 project. The same would be for the Trails Master Plan. The Trails Sidewalks Committee has also adopted the Trails portion. They're ready to execute the work. It's just a matter of coming out with the priorities, adopting those, and beginning the designs. And so I do believe that that's been addressed.
And the river also.
And the river as well, yeah.
Yeah, I think we've set a very high standard for those projects that are already underway, and just want to encourage us to maintain that high level of excellence through those master plans.
All right. Sam?
Eric, one final thing. We're going to be able to give some visible signs down at the river of some, beginning work. I understand the April-May kind of timeline on prioritizing the trails, but it would seem to me with sidewalks where we can begin to give some visibility citywide, we shouldn't be too far from that kind of phasing, should we? I mean, we've got a general plan that I know we're adjusting and tweaking. I heard those considerations, but shouldn't we be earlier than the April-May time to begin?
I think once the map is completed and we can meet quickly with the subcommittee, we, in that same time frame, in just a couple of short months, we could be advertising for architects and engineers to do the work. Whether it's trails, sidewalks, and some of those other components, we are quite far along in the understanding what the project requirements are. Just as you've said, there's not a lot of new information on those, and so we do anticipate those being some of the early projects, the real projects that we can go out with immediately upon plan approval.
Larry?
With respect to the sidewalks, Eric, would you just give the council an overview of what the parameters are for the sidewalks? Like, they're going to be throughout the city, and they're going to be for public buildings, first priority for schools and libraries and things like that. I mean, just reiterate that, would you?
I think generally speaking, following Councilman McAtee's comments, I mean, that's exactly what we're looking at. I mean, obviously one of the first is to make sure that we're not, building a sidewalk that's already planned or to be constructed. We want to make best use of the MAPS 3 dollars, that we are going to come up with a sense of priorities, which is public connectivity and some of those things with a walkable city, making sure that we make those connections to schools and other public venue. But, we haven't fully developed that, and it is something the subcommittee is actively working on to make that recommendation back to you.
And of course, Larry, you'll recall hundreds of miles are coming for sidewalks from the bond issue, and those projects are in place, and the MAPS 3 funding is a separate issue, but I think to the citizens it might all look the same. It's all sidewalks to me.
It is a separate issue, but what I wanted to try to get across, Eric, is the fact that every neighborhood is not going to get a sidewalk down every neighborhood street with the MAPS 3 money. That the public connectivity for schools, for example, or libraries, and then the other, on the road projects that are going on, sidewalks being added there, but we're not going to have sidewalks on everybody's street when we're all through.
There's definitely not enough funding to do that, but we have to prioritize those needs and go through that process, yes, very much so.
Skip and then Gary.
Yes. The water rafting project, has there been any involvement in reference to the committees as it relates to that?
We have discussed the Whitewater facility as a part of the river in the early river meetings and some of the early communications we've had with the Boathouse Foundation and River Sport. It is obviously one of the projects they look very much forward to, but right now it's not a high priority. Some of their high priorities are more on the existing race course and some of those improvements with the night lighting, some of the aesthetic and LED lighting that they're expecting, the grandstands, and then of course the walkability of the Lincoln Bridge, making it ADA accessible and some of those things. Very important project, but on their priority list, I would say that it's second to some of those other major racecourse improvements.
And my last question, in relation to the Native American Cultural Center with the river projects, will there be any type of engagement, or has there been any engagement with the Native American Cultural Center since the river project is going to anchor right in front of the Cultural Center, as far as some type of partnership projects?
Yeah. We are working towards that. We've actually had the Native American Cultural Center make presentations to the River Subcommittee so that they're very well of the development that's east of I-35. We've also been very protective of some of the early projects not having that partnership in place, but we do have Gina Timberman as a member of the subcommittee, and so we very much have that representation as well, and I'm sure that we'll develop that and move forward together.
Okay. Gary?
Concerning the wellness centers, I've had some comments from some of the subcommittee that they were surprised at their very first meeting they had a consultant already selected laid in front of them with a scope of work. And my question is the scope of work for that consultant broad enough that the target audience, the target activities, the locations and all of that will come back and still have some room for the committee to work through that, or did we simply hire a consultant that's going to end up doing what the committee thought they were going to do when they first walked in?
So the consultant that we've hired is really just a starting point to help us better understand what the basic needs of a wellness center are, and more specifically the needs of Oklahoma City. So we can look around other communities and we can find what's worked best, say, in Arkansas and other states, but the committee has been very strong in making sure that whatever we do here in Oklahoma City is for us. And so this consultant's going to help do that. They're going to help us put together the basic components of what the building should generally include. But yes, it's going to be general enough to make sure that we've got flexibility, not just in one individual project, but knowing that we have other communities around our city, have some specialization of those. It could depend on the partner, it could depend on the community, and a variety of things. And so we're going to leave quite a bit of room there for the subcommittee to work and make sure that we make the delivery best use for Oklahoma City.
So you're confident that any concerns the committee had about work that they thought they should have done before the consultant can still be discussed after the consultant comes back with his report?
Yes, and the consultant's actually going to make periodic reports as a part of the process, so I don't anticipate hiring the consultant and then just handing them a report. They're going to be a part of developing that report for the project, so they're going to be actively involved when they meet monthly.
Okay. Any other comments or questions for Harry?
Is the consultant looking at other cities?
They will. And that was at a specific request of the subcommittee, was to do a survey and find out what amenities are options, and then, of course, do some local survey, do some local analysis, and to decide what's best for here.
Okay. Pat?
Just to comment on the sidewalks, I hope when we design the sidewalks, we make them wide enough so that the pedestrians will feel comfortable walking on them. We've got some locations where we have sidewalks adjacent to arterial streets where the traffic's moving at a posted speed of 45 miles an hour, probably much in excess of that, and we've got a sidewalk adjacent to the curb, and people won't use it because they don't feel comfortable having that fast-moving traffic so close to them. So I hope we keep that in mind, and maybe use wider sidewalks. I know there's national standards, but I don't know that they're adequate to really provide the level of comfort and safety that our citizens will demand fully utilize the sidewalk.
Okay. Any other comments or questions for Eric? Eric, I'll just point out, I know you're dealing with Maps for Kids at the same time. I can't imagine all the work that's going on in your office, but we appreciate your diligence in all of this.
Thank you.
You bet.
Next up is Andrea French, who's going to come forward and show us some pictures of the progress of 180. I think you obviously are driving it or going past it and seen some of it firsthand, but you may not have seen all the projects. And I'm pretty sure you haven't seen some of the progress that's been done over at the Myriad Garden, so I think that would be a good chance to see that too. So with that, Andrea?
Okay. Good morning. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for inviting me to come before you. And we are pretty excited that the weather has been cooperating a little bit more this week, and our crews are able to get back out there and get back to work. I'm going to talk a little bit about our communications and what we're doing with Project 180 as far as outreach external and internally. And then I'm going to run through a series of photographs, just some updates of the different pieces of the project. So feel free to stop me if you have any questions, because there are quite a few photos. First, I kind of want to backtrack a little bit and talk a little bit about the branding that we've done with Project 180, which is really important. And during Eric's presentation, we talked a little bit about the confusion of bond projects, MAPS 3, Project 180. Everyone just sees construction and really doesn't understand what it's associated with. And so we've felt that it's really important to brand the project, and this has really helped people associate and get excited about some of the things that are coming down the pipeline. So here you can see where we've translated the brand a little bit for different banners and logos and things like that. Next, I'll talk a little bit about our online outreach with citizens, visitors, motorists. We have Makeover Magazine, which goes out just about every week, provides project updates, a little bit about what's going on. It also includes the weekly traffic advisory. We have several hundred fans on Facebook, and we have also about 500 followers on Twitter, and we've uploaded about 4,000 photos on Flickr, which are completely accessible to the public, and you can gauge the views, and we've seen over 3,000 views of those photos. So people are looking at what's going on and the progress of the project, which is pretty exciting. Another component that we're doing, obviously, are wayfinding signs, which you see strategically placed at different intersections. And this is really for a lot of the public facilities and businesses downtown that are concerned that people don't know if that they're still open. While we can't market for them and say that they're open, we can provide wayfinding signage where it makes sense, and that's what we've done. You also see in specific situations where we've completely limited access to a particular business. For instance, the MICU drive-through, we've had to compromise that a couple of times for some water line tie-ins. We provided a sign for them to let people know that they could enter that off of Colcord. And then, of course, just your regular traffic control signs, really making sure that those make sense to the general public, and constantly keeping those maintained. I'm not sure what the resolution is like on your screen, but this is an example of the weekly traffic advisory map that goes out every Friday from the Public Information Office. And this has proved very helpful for many people, many motorists. On the right, you see the general traffic advisory notes, and this is an older one from a couple weeks ago. And then you see the master map there, and this can be enlarged. You can zoom in, you can print it out. I know some of the hotels have used it for their patrons that are out of town and maybe don't understand what's going on and don't understand how to get around necessarily and what's closed and what's not. So that's been very helpful. We also continue to do our presentations to civic groups, businesses, really anybody that wants a presentation gets one. We've done, I think, over 80 at this point, and that's myself, that's the program manager, and I think even some council people have probably spoke on the project. We'll also continue to do our public meetings. We'll probably be having another one very shortly once we start to unveil some completed pieces of the project. And we also continue to do property visits, which are really important because that's really the one-on-one with the property managers, owners, businesses. We do it before construction, before we come in with a package. We do it during construction, obviously, while we prepare them for the challenges of construction. They're never quite prepared for maybe how long it's going to take or for some of the inconveniences that are going to happen. And so we really continue those property visits during construction. A lot of times they're just phone calls back and forth of trying to resolve some issues. And then also, the external communications are really important, but just as important are the internal communications. And so we really try to tackle those issues with various coordination meetings. And these are just a few of the highlighted meetings that we have. We have our weekly traffic coordination meeting where everybody comes to the table. We talk about downtown events that are going on, access needs, when it makes the most sense to have to shut a piece of a street down to tie in a 15-foot water line, a sewer line, things like that. We also have utility coordination meetings. At any given time, we have at least, half a dozen utilities that are in the same area or on the same package, and really have to talk to one another, coordinate with the contractors, and make sure that they are all communicating properly. And then we have our general construction coordination meetings, which are just really between the different contractors on the different packages of the streetscape, because we do find that they learn from each other. Even though Package 2 is very far from Package 1, they do learn from each other on the different pieces of the project. This is actually a shot of what our new website will look like. We are in the final design stages of this. We're pretty excited. It's going to be a little bit more interactive than the one that we have now, which is just off of the okc.gov main website. We'll have an interactive construction map where you can plug in what you want to look at. You want to look at current construction, any kind of future construction, and things like that. And then to the right, you see we will have the most urgent messages available on the right-hand side there. We'll also have some summaries about the project, and we are examining text alerts as well. Now I'm going to run through some different pieces of the project. This is actually a shot of inside the Myriad Gardens. This is if you were standing at on the roof of the Cox Center, looking northwest. This is actually 12:30 yesterday. You can see a lot of activity going on. The white beams there are actually the foundation for the new restaurant. And then this is actually looking towards the Oklahoma City Arena, looking east. You can see there the Crystal Bridge with its brand new glazed panels. You can see the renovations to the West Lake, and I have some closer shots of that as well. This picture I love. I think I'm losing this. This picture I absolutely love because it really shows the amount of coordination and teamwork that's involved and that's going on inside the gardens. This is some of the boulders that are being placed in this picture for the 20 to 25 foot cascading waterfall, which is going to sit just northeast of the Crystal Bridge. And this is a little bit of a closer shot of the West Lake. This is actually the staircase coming down to the West Lake, and there will actually be a water feature along those railings, a cascading waterfall that comes down on that north side there that you see. This is another view of it, and you can see some of the heavier planting. And this was actually Friday when we still had some snow on the ground. It's actually very pretty. This is an area, the Groves, which is going to line the perimeter of the Hudson piece of the Myriad Gardens. This is where, when we have the Festival of the Arts, you will see it actually programmed a little bit into the gardens. And this is all the trees that line that area. This is the foundation for the new bandshell, which sits on the north side of the gardens and will front the new grand lawn. And here we have a closer shot of the foundation for the restaurant, which sits on the east side of the Myriad Gardens, closest to the Cox Center and Oklahoma City Arena. And here we move down to the children's area, and this is a very, very basic beginning of the new hedge maze that will be in place in the children's area. It's about a 4-foot hedge maze that will allow the children to explore and play, but still be low enough that the parents can keep their eye out for them. Did I skip one? No, there we go. And again, I'm not sure how clear this is on your picture, like this one as well, because this shows some of the actual intensive hand labor that's going on inside the gardens. This is a material called lithocrete, and if you're not familiar with it, it is a very durable concrete that usually has crushed shells, marbles, or glass in it. This particular kind is actually crushed glass, and this is the colored glass that's going to be part of some of the designs that you're going to see in the children's garden. And lithocrete you're going to see throughout the gardens. So the sidewalks that are lining the gardens will be a white lithocrete, and so they will have that crushed glass in it as well. And it's very beautiful, and it's a lot more durable than your standard concrete. I'm going to move to package 1, which is the Reno package, which is Reno all the way from Dewey to E.K. Gaylord, and then that little piece of Robinson from Sheridan to Reno. And this is looking east. You can see brand new sidewalks are in, curbs, pavers. We've even the tree wells and the new trees. And you can see that the paving on the north side of Reno is completed, and they've started the work on the south side. This is actually the median that's going to be going in the middle of Reno. You can see they've put in some of the utility lines in there, and they're really beginning to create that new median that's going to stretch almost all the way across Reno. This is the intersection of Reno and Robinson, which, as you know, right now is shut down as they complete that intersection, coordinating with some of the utilities, and then really creating that intersection a quadrant at a time. And this just illustrates some of the grading that goes on prior to placing the final pieces of concrete to make sure that the grading is per design. We're going to move up to package 2 around the National Memorial. This is actually the 903 gate. We're looking east, standing on Northwest 5th. You can see that Northwest 5th and that Harvey intersection completely done and opened up to traffic. You can see the pavers on the right with the new curbs, new trees, and those are actually Chinese pistache, or the species for that tree. Let's see here. And this is a little closer look at some of the pavers that are right up against the 903 gate. You can see some design there. And this is looking west, where actually there's the Regency Tower there. You can see they've completed now the north side of Northwest 5th with pavers, sidewalk, and trees as well. As they continue on package 2, they're moving further south on Harvey, and they're also, this is actually McGee looking towards Robinson, and they've actually completed some of the paving, and they're working behind the curb in what's called the amenity zone, which is where the trees and tree wells and all of the irrigation will be housed. Move down to package 3. This is actually a shot of standing on a Sheridan Walker garage. You can see half of Walker completed on the top of the screen there, and then you can see the half of Sheridan that they are continuing to place the concrete. At this point, also in package 3, they're beginning to work behind the curb in the amenity zone and really start to place in the material there and the irrigation and the silvicell, which is the type of soil that they use behind the curb. This is another shot of Walker. You can see how long it's done. And then this is on the north side of West Main Street, right adjacent to the Hightower building. This is a great illustration of some of these situations that we've run into downtown where we have basements that actually come out underneath the sidewalk. And so in order to reconstruct the sidewalk, we have to actually seal the basement lid. Because as you can see, as soon as you lift off that sidewalk, that is also the roof of the basement there. And so this next shot shows the crews coming back in and actually sealing up and getting ready to lay the new sidewalk in. So that's a couple of situations like that downtown. And that's it. So I'll take questions. Kind of ran through that quickly. So
Questions on Project 180? Sam?
Mayor, just notice in walking to the arena, I still use the city parking lot and go down Hudson to Reno and walk down. A lot of people use the Arts Council parking lot. And that walkway, because you can't use the north side, on the south side of Reno from Hudson to the arena is just very dark. And there's a lot of construction debris in there, and I just thought if there's even some temporary ground lighting
Yeah, you're correct. The old lighting's been removed. It is a dark area on that. We're obviously putting in new lighting. The bases have been set, and we are in the process of getting the new lights. Those are going to be a few weeks away yet from getting those put in. But
We're also looking...
Concern is not unfounded.
Right. We're also looking at making that walkway a little bit friendlier, exploring some different options with that. So we do understand it's a little challenging right now. Any other questions?
Larry?
Henry, could you give our viewers just a brief recap of the finances for this? Are you prepared to do that?
Absolutely, yeah, sure. Project 180 is funded out of the TIF, the Tax Increment Financing District that was created as a result of the Devon Tower. That generates about $115 million towards Project 180. And then we also take $26.4 million from the general obligation bonds that were passed in 2007. Total package price is about $141 million.
And as far as MAPS 3, no MAPS 3 money is involved.
That is absolutely correct. Thank you for clarifying.
Are you financially, are you on target in reference to the funds that, from the TIF and the other source of funding?
Yeah, we're very close to being on budget. We've run into a couple of surprises along the way, but we're pretty confident we're going to be able to complete the project and to the quality we want and to the extent that we want. But it isn't without challenge.
Okay.
Any other
Andrew,
questions?
we really appreciate all your work on this. I
Okay.
know the number of civic meetings that you've taken place. I've get great feedback on your presentation, and you alleviate a lot of fears and concerns out there. So thank you very much for your work during this project.
Thank you very much.
You bet.
That's all I have under city manager reports. I'd be happy to answer any questions the council may have.
All right. Citizens to be heard? No one has signed up? All right, we have executive session. We'll be back.